What if I'm not passionate
Plot
enough
twist,
to make
saying nope is
What
part of the
if
plan.
I don't want to be just
Is it
one
bad
thing?
that I still don't know what I
scared
want
I'll
to
get
be?
stuck doing something I
Support
hate
matters.
forever.
I just need someone in my corner, not
Everyone
a
keep
poster on the wall.
asking me what my one passion
What if I ask
is.
for help and no one listens?
In this episode of Student-Led Conversations, the mic is in the hands of two Gen Z voices, leading a bold, honest dialogue that challenges everything you thought you knew about passion, purpose, and career paths. From navigating uncertainty to rewriting outdated advice, today's cross-generational conversation goes deep into how students are really thinking about the future and why employers need to tune in.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Accounting Arc Student-Led Conversations, where we explore big ideas through student voices. I'm your host, Arpin Gurwal, and today I'm excited to share the mic with co-host Harshita Multani.
Hi everyone, I'm really excited to be joining the Student-Led Conversations podcast series and also to be a part of this community and this conversation.
We're also joined today by two amazing professionals, Texlin Quinney, founder of Total Quality Excellence, and Byron Patrick, CEO of Verify IQ, co-founder of TB Academy, and he's also one of the co-hosts of Center for Accounting Transformation's Accounting Arc podcast. If you would like to take a couple of minutes and introduce yourselves to our listeners, that would be amazing.
Texlin Quinney, founder of Total Quality Excellence, focus on three streams of business: basketball training for high school and middle school students, academic advising specifically for graduate students who are trying to navigate higher education, and I do financial stewardship for individuals and financial consulting for businesses, to name a few. And the whole idea on all three streams is to provide growth, transformation as they are trying to achieve whatever objectives that they have. Thanks for having me today.
That's awesome. Good to meet you all. My name's Byron Patrick. I am a CPA. You mentioned a few of the things I'm doing, spinning a lot of hats between the ARC podcast, as well as running an accounting software business and doing AI training for CPAs. I've been in the accounting profession for more than 2 decades at this point, as hard as that is to admit, and been in a lot of different capacities, working with firms, working in firms, working in technology, and really just being an involved citizen within the profession. So super excited to talk about some of the things that students and young professionals should be thinking about as you move into your careers.
Well, we're both really glad to have you today, and I think today's conversation will help bridge some generational gaps and also even just challenge how we talk and think about our careers.
Exactly. As students, we're constantly being asked, what's your passion, or what do you want to do with your life? But recently, one of our guests posted something that challenged that idea. Byron, your LinkedIn post, Stop Telling Kids to Find Their Passion, really seemed to have sparked some discussion, and I know that it got me and Harshita talking. Can you start us off by sharing what motivated you to post that, and what message were you hoping to send?
Yeah, that is awesome that it inspired conversation, and that was the intention, the hope that somebody would be listening. So my youngest daughter just graduated from the University of Pittsburgh, and she is getting ready to begin her career. She's currently, in the job search, looking to pursue her quote unquote passion. And, in those conversations, in trying to help her figure out and navigate these early decisions, it seemed like she was, had been hearing a lot of the, find your passion and you'll never work a day in your life. Find your passion. And what was missing from those conversations, in my opinion, is the idea that finding your passion is a journey. It is not a step. And she seemed to be caught in this idea that the first thing that she did out of college had to be her passion, and anything else was not going to be the right next step. So, it really got me thinking as she and I had those conversations just about, kind of having a broader conversation to where we're discussing that passion is not a moment in time. Passion is a journey and things that we want to pursue. So that's what inspired the post, and I'm super glad that it inspired us to be here today talking about it.
Of course. I mean, I read it and it got me thinking that, well, are these passions that I have right now, will they still be the same passions that I have when I do apply for college and go to college next year? And will it be the same passion that I have when I graduate college? There's really not any right way of knowing what you're going to end up as and who you're going to be.
I did read your post, and I thought it was fascinating. We do share a lot because I don't think passion is a step per se, which had me ask my son, who is about to be 17. He's a junior in high school. So I kind of asked him that, but it made me also think when I decided to go into my doctoral program, one of the professors who was writing a recommendation for me said, "Are you passionate about the subject matter that you're going to entail?" And so, what I always tell when I give advice to young people specifically is we have to be clear on what our definition of passion is, and it has evolved over time. So, less being a step, the question is it innate or is it something that has to be developed? And no matter which answer you have for that, in both cases, you still have to go through a process of discovery, a process of growth, and it's constantly evolving. And so for me, I try to encourage young people, whatever that passion ends up being, is that it's in something that's a core value, something that's intangible versus a role, a position, a specific job or company that you want to work for. I hear students all the time say, "Well, I want to go to this school and I got to do whatever's necessary to get into that school." Well, yeah, we all know that there's disappointment, there's challenges in that. And so when you say that it's a journey, that's a part of the passion. And that's why people ask that question is, okay, what is it, something that you have that interest? Because as you start to move through it, the exposure to so many other things opens that passion even more and you move with it. So they say, oh, for a career path in particular, some people view that as, oh, I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to be a lawyer. Well, the reality is that that interest is there, but once you're exposed to certain things, you may say, not so much. Because I thought I was going to be a lawyer at one point, and I ended up doing accounting and mathematics. Saw it coming. And so I tell people in a very general sense, my passion is learning. And that has taken me on an absolute journey to things I could have never imagined. You meet people that you would have never known. So I do think in giving that advice, and I don't think you should just throw it out and not use it, but I think it needs to be followed up and explained so that both sides understand what it is that you're trying to impart in them. That's my initial take on when I read your article and the comments that followed.
Yeah, that's so great. And I love that point because I think defining the passion and what that is really important because you're absolutely right. I can imagine when I first was starting my career, my passion was in the numbers of accounting. Like I loved the numbers of accounting. Like that was my passion. And but that wasn't the passion. What the passion was actually what that allowed me to do, the problem solving that I could do, and that was kind of the medium. And so, as my career has transformed many times over the years, that core of kind of like problem solving and finding solutions has been consistent, but there's been so many different mediums. So you would probably say that has really been the passion that has driven all of these journeys.
I love how both of you talked about evolving throughout your life with your passion because I honestly aligned to me too. When I first initially saw the post, it was honestly eye-opening because it kind of reminded me of how much I changed my passion throughout my life as well. Like I distinctly remember when I was younger, I wanted to go into astronomy. I wanted to be an astronaut. And now it's been like changed slowly and now I'm in the business field. It makes me think too, like how much is it going to change? How much is it going to change throughout time?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when I was little, I can tell you that I had some of the biggest and wildest dreams, like being a mermaid and then being a teacher and then wanting to be a dentist and then a doctor. But then I was really set on a doctor, but the more my environment around me changed as I grew up, and the more that I sat back and watched what's really going around me and what people are doing constantly, it really inspired me to figure out what I wanted to do and what I was good at. And I knew that I always had a passion for really sharing what's on my mind and speaking out for people and helping people since day one. I just was too scared to find that passion. I didn't have enough confidence with it. But over time, it slowly came out. And I feel like that's why you can't really define what your passion is from day one, because over time, you will grow the skills and you will grow into different environments and meet different people who will help you guide you into a different lifestyle than you have right now.
You said something really important there, that the environment is changing, and
Mhm.
that is going to change so many times. Frankly, the things that I'm doing today did not exist 20 years ago when I was early in my career. So, being aware of the environmental factors and looking at those and making decisions based on those changes, is part of the journey.
Yeah. I mean, I know before COVID in middle school, everyone was going into the medical field. Everyone wanted to be doctors. That was the dream career. And after the pandemic happened, the want to be in that career and industry decreased very rapidly. And then now with the like increase of AI, everyone's seeking for these tech and IT jobs and going into AI careers because that's where the spotlight is right now. So I feel like also which industry the media covers as, oh, this is the next big thing. Invest your time and invest yourself in this, and it will pay off. And that also helps change what people's passions are.
I think the other part of it is, and it comes back to the core value is, yes, you have a certain passion, but what is it that you're truly chasing?
Mhm.
What are you trying to achieve? The other part is, I think it's how it's always been worded. It's you have to choose one. I did a career fair at a middle school one day, and there are, just people, FBI, CIA, police officers, and the kids would go to the tables and it was silence because the first question was, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? But when they came to my table, I said, what are your interests? And the kids looked at me. I said, you do realize that you don't only have to choose one. After that, the floodgates open. Well, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a poet. And now the perception is I can do multiple things. You can have a podcast and also be a doctor. You can have a podcast and be a lawyer and be the coach of your kids' little league. There are so many things that you can do, which then alters and changes initially what your passions are. But I do think as you get older and you get more experience, you start to hone in, as Byron said, on, you know what? What's core to all of the different things I do is problem solving. And you begin to really figure out, hey, this is my passion and I can use it here. I can use it there. And who knows, the unexpected happens. To your point, new things are created, opportunities that didn't exist. The WNBA didn't exist when I was a kid. The ultimate goal was I'm going to play in college and get a scholarship. And as I was coming to the end of my senior year in college, we had the ABL and the WNBA, and it was like, wait, I have an opportunity to play a little longer. This is outstanding. So you just never know. So I think we have to kind of change the way we communicate to young people and say, hey, the opportunities are endless. Yes, you have to find some balance and not try to do everything known to man. I mean, that's just natural. You have to be healthy. But I think it's important that we change how we communicate, the language that we're using,
Mhm.
because sometimes the way you formulate your question or your response will get people to kind of fall into a silo. And I'm not a silo type person, and I don't lead that way. So
I was gonna say I love the part where you're saying that people can do multiple things at once because I feel like a part of this goes back to just seeing things on social media. Like I feel like now at this day and age, we see so many people that represent us, like students and other people, just people doing multiple things at once, and just people are sharing this as well. Like you're seeing people who are doctors, as you said, have podcasts and they're sharing their interest in medical. You're seeing all of these influencers also be authors, and this even reminds me of myself because when I started my YouTube channel, I didn't think I could have that balance of being a student and handling all of that school workload and also having my own YouTube channel and doing all of that stuff. But I feel like so much of it depends on just doing it and just going through the actual journey so that you can see the results come through as you go.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one of the things to also keep in mind is the multiple things doesn't necessarily mean uh, different hats that you're wearing. So, for example, for me, problem solving is definitely a passion of mine. I've that like I liked puzzles from day one. I liked figuring them out, and that relates to all the different things that I am doing today. I also love developing people. Over the years, I've been in many different roles where I have built teams and developed people, and that is something that I really enjoy doing. So I'm able to have multiple passions all culminating to a single role. You don't have to necessarily have many different roles. And, through all of these things, I've also figured out a lot of stuff I don't like that I am not passionate about, and that is actually almost more important than figuring out what you're passionate about because we are wired to find things that we enjoy. And figuring out the things that we don't enjoy, the things that we are not passionate about, is also really critical because that helps us to make these decisions along this journey. Like, if I was going to create my own YouTube channel, for example, there are a lot of things related to that I would not enjoy. There are things that I know you need to do to be successful in that is not things I would enjoy. I don't mind like participating in it, but letting somebody else do all of the other things. And that's important because otherwise you're going to jump into arenas because you're like, I love the idea of having a YouTube channel, and then you show up and you're like, there's a lot of stuff here that is not for me. So, you have to go through this journey and discover those things that you're not passionate about, and it will help you significantly in finding the things that you do enjoy and you can be successful doing.
Yeah. And I feel like our generation has been the first one to actually say yes to every kind of experience and discover having multiple passions at once because it has been so easy for us. We have the whole world at the tip of our fingers, and we can discover what we like and what we don't like at such an early age. And I actually did an essay about this at school like a few weeks ago, and it was because of the influence of Barbie. Our generation grew up watching Barbie be every career in the whole world. And I was like, if she can do it, so can I. That's always been my biggest thing growing up. So I'm in so many different passions. I always say yes to every single opportunity because you never know where it's going to end up. The worst thing that can happen is that you don't end up learning anything from it and you hate it. But you will still take back the things that you did not like about it and put it towards a different passion and make sure that you'd never ever like go having to get into a passion that has those skills or the core values of what you didn't like. So it does save your time and it does further you into any industry where you can be a star in.
I think the other piece that's a part of all of this is the support system. Basically, I call it the community of accountability. So even in things that you embark on if you find, hey, I don't like this at all. I mean, there are some things that you have an interest in and you have no clue how to enter into that area, how to navigate that area. It's great that you have the interest, but what do I do? I think there are a lot of young people who have been stunted or stopped too
Yep.
soon or quit too soon because there was no one in their corner to really help out. And what do you do? Most people, you say it starts at home. Well, what happens if home life is not that great? There's no one there for you to turn to. What are your outlets? And so what was interesting in talking to my son, um, he said, some of my peers, he said they just don't. There's no one there. He said the resources at school sometimes are not, yes, the posters on the wall, but you're not familiar. And so there are no relationships, he said, that are fostered and built for us to even explore our ideas and gain exposure. So I would ask the two of you, what has your experience been like in your settings in terms of the resources in school as you get ready to come out, whether that's going to college, whether that's doing vocational things, whether that's having your own entrepreneurial set while you're simultaneously doing other things. What has that been like for you? Because I think those are some areas that I think we need to improve on as a society in terms of giving support to you all and to older people. People take it for granted to think that you all are the only ones that need help. I sit in offices all the time, and when I meet with my teams and I had meetings and I would ask, what is your interest beyond the job you have right now? And they were looking at me dumbfounded, like no one's ever asked me what I wanted to do besides this, because there are opportunities that either can be created or developed. And I know that's long-winded, but I wanted to make sure I get that out and also get your input into those things.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, do you want to start?
okay, I can start.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I love that question. I feel like there's so much where you can build upon with that question. For me, when it comes to resources, I feel like the resources are there, but I feel like so many students just don't know that they're there. There's so many occasions where I've went to my counselor to ask a question about college or anything, and they've said that their resources are there, but when I go to back to my peers and tell them about it, they don't know about it. I feel like so much of it just has to do with bridging that gap of communication, bridging that gap between the teachers and all of the peers that are helping you and the students as well. And just having that gap, like bridging that gap, will help so much with just knowing that there's the resources and taking up those opportunities to improve upon the things that you're struggling with.
Yeah, I would say the resources are definitely there, but the action needs to be made not only by just the teachers and the counselors reaching out to the students, being like, hey, if you need help, we're here, but also by the students taking the action to actually reach out, go to the teachers, go to the counselors, ask them for help, take upon those resources. And I feel like not many students do that. We're very known for keeping our problems to ourselves and not wanting to reach out or ask for help. And I am a person who does that. If I'm doing something, I'm not the first person to be like, yeah, I'm gonna ask for help. And that's not the people who are giving me the resources' fault. That is because of my fault, because I'm not the one taking action. So I feel like that is something that the teachers do need to communicate with their students as well.
Yeah, I really appreciate both of your answers there. And the question is a really important one because I think that it is really easy when we are young to kind of go out on our own and not look for those resources or things. Something I always taught my daughters is, nobody else is just going to volunteer to pay attention to you. Like you have to be your number one advocate because everybody else is busy being their own number one advocates. And if you want to learn about something, if you want to uh, take on an opportunity, as Arpin said, you need to take that action upon yourself. But it's really interesting because I would say in my career, I probably went through the first decade of my career not taking advantage of the resources that were available to me. I mean, I made some pretty significant career changes along the way where I felt very alone in making those decisions. And now, much later in my career, I recognize the network and the opportunities and the places that I could go to help with those types of decisions. So, I do agree there's a lot of personal accountability to go after that stuff. But I think it's also a recognition of you don't have to be alone in doing it and taking it on. There's so many people out there and opportunities, and to your point, I mean, I've always said I'm very, very envious of the younger generation because the world. I mean, when I was in school, when I was in high school, I never thought about this idea that I could possibly like study abroad. And now I think like many kids think about what like I could study abroad. Like when I'm sorry, in the 90s, that wasn't a conversation. But so, yeah, so to your point, like the access to things, the access to information, online communities, online resources, my gosh, it is pretty awesome time to be kind of like launching into your career and just having pretty much anything other than like living on Mars as something that's really within your reach.
Yeah. And I would say that like most schools nowadays and workplaces, they do have all the same resources, but it also depends on the person that is giving out those resources and the environment that you're in. Because if that environment is not working with you, those resources aren't going to do anything for you. Because I can say that because earlier my whole life, I've always been in the same school district. That school was not working for me. I would not be wherever I am today if I would have stayed in that school, being surrounded by those people. So I left, I joined a different school, and this school has helped me more, and they've been tailoring to my needs than what that school had because of the type of people who are giving it. And that's just not that it's a problem. It could be working for someone else, but it did not work for me. So I feel like the student has to also figure out, and employees, they have to figure out, one, is the environment working for me? And two, will the resources help me if I'm still stuck in that environment if it's not working?
And you mentioned something that was, well, Harshita mentioned something that I think is key when you said, hey, I know that the resources are there and I go back to my peers and I share that. Something that I'm very mindful of that I've seen when I was younger, and again I see it in the professional settings, is that it may not be the job that you're at or the school that you're at, but we don't know what history people are carrying with them. And not everyone is courageous enough to say, hey, I can be proactive for myself because maybe they tried it and they didn't get a good reaction. It was a negative response. And so that fear, they carry it with them. That's part of their perception. So I think what's important and what I always impart to younger people is to go back specifically and have the courage. If your peer truly wants to do something, and a person will let you know, hey, I'm really trying, I want this help, I'm willing to make the next step. Support them, be that voice for them until they reach a point where they can have their own voice. And that's what's missing too. I think that there are some geniuses out there, things that we need solved. There's somebody that has that solution, but we don't know who they are because they're afraid to speak up. They've been pushed aside, pushed in the corner. So, as something to truly impart, we need more people who are willing to put themselves on the line for others. And I do believe your generation will do that to a fault sometimes. You're like, okay, this is good, but you got to pull back a little bit. But I think that that's missing in my generation and the generation before. It was, okay, yes, there are situations where I could possibly lose my job, but that environment wasn't working for you anyway. It's doing damage to your mental health, your physical health, your spiritual health, yet you're still dredging and you're going in there not realizing that your kids see you, your family see you, your friends see you, and it's a ripple effect. So I don't know, Byron, what your experience has been there, but I've just met so many people who just don't have the courage or
Yep.
the strength to defend themselves and to ask.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned that, and you're absolutely right. There's a lot of people who, they have some sort of story where maybe they did advocate for themselves and they didn't get it, so now they don't feel they can do it again. I just this morning I heard Al Roker gave a commencement speech recently where he talked about holding doors open for other people. And I think, one like it really resonated with me because I personally have always, you know, found opportunities to help others like that where you see some frustration, and it doesn't have to be significant. It can be as simple as helping them to write an email. It can be as simple as, just giving them the encouragement to try again. There's some very simple ways to help folks, and sometimes you just maybe even need to listen to find out what's holding them back. And let them just get that off their chest, and then they'll be like, you know what, I can go in and ask for those resources and things. So yeah, I love that sentiment, and it's easy for those of us who are self-starters to tell everybody else, like, just self-start, you can do it. It just isn't that simple for everybody. So, open some doors and hold some doors open for some other folks along the way. I have found not only can I help others, oftentimes it helps me in a lot of ways, when I offer that hand.
Yeah. And I feel like one thing that, like, no matter what your age you can do is that everyone has had tough things that they've had to accomplish or like beat. And once you accomplish those and move on with your life, there is someone else that is going through that tough time and they need help. But most of the time, they're not going to ask for it. So it's up to you to really reach out to them, be like, hey, I've been through this, whether it's career wise, mentally wise, anywise, reach out to them, be like, hey, I've been through this tough time. Let me help you. And then you can go heal or accomplish it quicker than what I went through. And I feel like everyone can do that.
I love how all of you guys were talking about just being the person to reach out because it reminded me so much of a study that I recently researched on. It was saying how you are the epitome of the top 5 people that you spend the most time with. But nobody talks about how those who are those 5 people. How do you find 5 people that you want to be like? How do you find 5 people that you actually want to be around? But being that person is doing the service of, I want to help out. I want to be the one to take that initiative. I feel like that's such an important point to just point out.
It's that, and then and some of the leadership trainings that I've been in, we talk about the inner circle and the outer circle. The inner circle you talk to on a regular basis, they know what's going on in your life, and vice versa. The outer circle may be that mentor that you talk to once every 3 months. And because they're on the outside, they have a view and a perspective that you normally wouldn't have. And I found that I've been more successful by having those individuals. I have people who I don't talk to for like a year. And then when you get on the phone with them, you pick up, you catch up briefly, and you say, "Hey, I'm calling you because I'm dealing with this." And they're like, "Hey, look at it this way, look at it that way." And so I think it's important that we build those, so that our blind spots can be addressed. And that's part of that passion that wanted those that are on search of. I believe that I knew mine at a very early age. It was just, hey, I gravitated to people who were educators in all spaces. And so I just did that. So it was strange for me to meet people who just didn't have an idea. They're like, Texan, I don't know what to do. I'm just out here, And I said, there's nothing wrong with that too. I said, because you're my aunt said she was a jack of all trades. It's okay to be that too, master of none, and one day it'll come, maybe it won't. But we need the fluidity. We need to allow ourselves that. I think, people hit a certain age and they go, I didn't accomplish this. I should have been here already. I should have been married. I should have had X amount of kids. And then the negativity starts to flow in. yes, we all want to have goals. You have markers and milestones that you want to reach. That's how you grow, that's how you develop. But I think sometimes we impose things on ourselves
Mhm.
that affect our passion, that make us start to question, man, is this something I really want to do? Maybe I don't. Maybe I went down the wrong path. And so I think that inner and outer circle is something I would impart to you, both of you, in your generation, um, so that you have all the tools that you need. The picture gets wider the more people that you have who can see what you can't see. They fill in the gaps. Like that puzzle you were talking about, Byron. You don't know that you dropped that one piece on the floor until
Right.
someone comes in the room and say, "Hey, Byron, do you need this piece?" And you've been going crazy, like, "Wait, it's somewhere on the table." So
Oh man, usually it's half the pieces. My pieces are all over the place, Texlin. Harshita, I really, I like that you're thinking about this idea of surrounding yourself with the right people, and the inner and the outer circle is such a great thing to think about as you are creating these networks. And I remember early in my career, I used to laugh because there were these people who always made me think of, there was a book growing up. It was like, I think it was like, Are You My Mother? And it was like this bird that lost its mom. And it was like asking a cat and a dog and a like tractor, like, Are you my mother? And it was kind of like all these people that like I knew early in my career who were like looking for their mentor. And they were like, Are you my mentor? Are you my mentor? Are you my? And it just doesn't happen that way. It just happens by like ending up in the right room where you make some sort of connection and then you maintain that connection. And that inner circle, it's important to protect that inner circle because when you are lending a hand to other people, it's really easy for that inner circle to become full of people who are depending on you, who are like looking to you. And it's great to have those people as contacts, but they're not your inner circle. They're just people that you are helping along the way. That inner circle are people who inspire you, or people who are doing great things where you're like, that's inspiring me to do more great things. And then that outer circle are people that you're just going to cross paths with. Throughout my career, I've had so many people come in and out of that outer circle that I've met through like a client connection where there was somebody there who, after the meeting, said, you want to catch up sometime and like have a coffee or whatever, and those moments. And to Texlin's point, I could call any one of them, even if I haven't talked to them in 5 years, and just pick right up and have some amazing conversations. So building that network of support is all part of the journey. And, if you get like hyper focused looking for like, are you my mentor? You're going to find a whole bunch of people who like the people who raise their hand and say, yes, I want to be your mentor. Usually just people who like to give advice because they like to feel really good about themselves and giving advice. That's not the way it works. It just like there's a lot of good mentors out there who like to be mentors, but don't just go knocking on doors because you'll get a lot of people volunteering that probably aren't necessarily the person you want.
I was gonna say how I love the point where you're saying that there's going to be people that are going in and out of your inner circle and outer circle because it's important to be selective of the people that you are letting in your inner circle. There's going to be so many people that you meet in your life, and in my eyes, I feel like there should be a certain standard that you should have for your inner circle because that certain standard is going to set how you expect to see that certain standard is going to be setting everything else that you're going to be seeing around you. That certain standard is also going to be the way that you are going to be viewing everything else in your whole life. These people that you are keeping in your inner circle, these people are the ones that are going to be shaping your thoughts and your mindset on how you approach different interactions.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I can tell you over, the decades of my career, I've had people who I really like personally, like people that like, you know what, I will go to dinner, I will have drinks, we will hang out, we will have a good time. But every time I talk to them, all they're doing is complaining about their job, complaining about, that like the world is against them, like, and all they like, they're these energy vampires that just suck the life out of you. And they're like, again, I love having a beer with them, but like that kind of stuff, like you just have to kind of like draw some boundaries in those situations. And, like it's okay to really like people that you just don't want to have a lot of those conversations with and distance yourself because you need to be protective of the energy that they are giving you.
Yeah. And I feel like this whole discussion that we've had really ties in back into the last sentence of Byron's post. Stop giving young adults anxiety and start giving them constructive guidance that will help them to keep moving towards their goals. I'm going to start with Byron. Byron, what would you say about that last sentence? And how do you tie that in with how the workplace is in between all different types of generations? And what is the first step everyone should be taking?
Oh, wow. I didn't realize how heavy that last line was, but like here's the deal. The decisions you all are making right now early in your career don't matter as much as you think they do. And I think that's what so many students are getting stuck in because they're like, if I make this wrong decision right now, like I'm just like, I botched it for the rest of and it's just not true. Like you're going to make a decision, it's going to be the wrong decision, and then you're going to make another wrong decision, and then another one, and eventually those wrong decisions will land on a right decision. And you will have only gotten there because of those wrong decisions. So like don't stress about all these different things and different situations. Like you just have to keep the motion going. Just keep going in like moving. Because once you stand there because you're paralyzed from anxiety, that's when you're making the wrong decision. So like just like don't worry about it as much. And when you go into your career, here's the reality. Everybody is a human being. The boomers in the room, the Gen Xers, the millennials, the Gen Zs, we're all human beings. And, like just treat each other as human beings. Nobody's a king, nobody's a queen. Like you will make human connections when you treat everybody as humans.
Yeah. And I feel like our generation has been so easy at setting boundaries in workplaces. And that boundary can also be a thin line between what they like to do about their job and what they don't want to do about their job. And often they don't realize, like, yeah, if you don't want to do the parts of your job that you don't like, there is an option to find a different job where you are just doing the parts that you mostly like. So,
There.
Texlin, what would
I'm
you?
sorry.
Oh, you're good.
Let
You
me
can
jump
talk.
in really
Yeah.
quick, just for a second.
Byron, you
Um,
might go down the road I was about to go down. So let's see.
well, we did an ARC episode on drawing boundaries and the distinction between a boundary and a preference. And, I do think that there's a very delicate line between, like, if it's in your job description, you can't draw a boundary that you're not going to do that if it's part of your job responsibilities. So I would encourage everybody to check out the ARC episode we did talking about boundaries because we had some fun conversations there. So I'm sorry, Texlin.
Oh no, you summed it up real nice there, so I can move past that. But what I was going to say is, and this does cross all generations, is that you have to embrace obstacles, challenges, and failure, because it's in all of those that you learn the most. It's in all of those where you make better decisions. And you say, I, in hindsight, now that I have all this information, I wouldn't have chose that, but you wouldn't have been able to make that decision until you went through what it is you went through. So I think we have to learn how to embrace that. And I'm biased a little bit towards your generation in this sense, and it touches a little bit about what you mentioned, boundaries and preferences. Um, There are some things that are not in your job description, but it is something that you have to do to move forward because it could be something that just came up and it needs to be done. And that is a thin line, and it's case by case sometimes in determining that. But I often talk to young people who are like, "Oh, I'm not going to do that. I'm the best and the brightest," is what they told me. That's great. I was the best and the brightest too when I came out, but there are still things that I had to do and to learn and push through to gain that necessary strength to train the next person or to help the next person. So all of it is not bad. Everyone's not trying to get you to do the tedious work just to do the tedious work, but sometimes understanding long division helps you appreciate short division.
Yeah. And I feel like that like really ties in with college and university as well because when you go to college, you have your set major and you know what you're gonna do, but that whole first year you guys have to learn the core classes and it's classes where you're like, is this even like gonna help me in the future? Do I even need to pay attention to math when I'm gonna become an English major? Like I feel like the kids like nowadays, we have to also realize that college is very much similar to what the workplace is going to be. You're going to have to learn these skills because you may not use what math or anything in your job, but you will use the skills of detail and stuff like that in your job as well, which you learn from math.
Absolutely. And I think it's the more than anything else, regardless of the subject matter, it's the ability to critically think.
Hmm.
That is something that I think you can do a whole podcast on just knowing and understanding that. I remember, and I went into college saying I was going to major in math and business was going to be my minor. I switched that at a certain point because I said, "Oh, I don't think I want to be in a cube and working by myself the whole time. I do need to integrate with people." But the last assignment that I had in my math course was I had to explain why a straight line is really not a straight line. And I got to tell you, it was pages and pages of this proof. And I said to myself when I was done, when am I ever going to use that information? But I have to tell you, when I got into my doctoral program and I had to write my dissertation, while I wasn't proofing a line, I knew how to cognitively think and proof out some of my arguments and some of my ideas. Those skills that you learn in one space, you'll be surprised when you get ready to apply them in another space, and they have absolutely nothing to do, like you said, about your core subject matter. But it comes into play, and you may not consciously be thinking, "Oh, this is where I used it." It just becomes a part of who you are, and you just do it. And I think that's the beauty of learning. That is, it's a wonderful thing. It's surprising. You can't always predict the end, and the awakening from it with that joy, you get excited and you just want to share it. You can't keep it to yourself. It forces you to share it with other people.
I feel like so much of this comes with just having an open mind, being open to being able to make a change. Like how you said earlier that you switched the accounting and the how you switched the math and business part and you switched them to be the other way around. And I feel like especially in college now, all of these students are making these choices for majors, but they also should take into account that I am allowing myself to make the room to be able to make this change in the future as well. I'm going into this new environment and taking in all of these new things. And like how Arpin said, that this is your first year, you're going to be learning all the core classes. You're also going to be adjusting to a whole new environment. Humanizing all the people around you is so important too, because all these new students around you, all of these are new college students. They're all going through the same thing that you are. Being able to just have that open mindset too, it's okay to be able to make mistakes. It's okay that I'm going to be making changes throughout my years in college. All of these things can add up to be something really valuable for college.
Yeah. This has been such a powerful conversation, and it feels like we could be talking for another hour or two, but we're coming up to the end of our time, and I want to thank you, Byron and Texlin, for joining us today for today's episode of Student-Led Conversations.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yes, this has been such a great conversation. I've learned so much, and not only that, but I'm also so excited for the next episode.
I couldn't agree more, Harshita. Well, that's it for today's episode of Accounting Arc Student-Led Conversations. We'd like to thank everyone for tuning in, and if you enjoyed this discussion, please be sure to subscribe, share, and join us next time for more insightful conversations. Until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep making an impact. See you next time.
The Center for Accounting Transformation provides business professionals with a network for utilizing innovations that are ready for adoption, the training and resources necessary to apply those innovations, and an opportunity to engage the talent and community needed to further the pursuit of innovative accounting practices that drive responsible and mindful business performance. If you'd like to learn more about our Agents of Transformation campaign or share your own story, please visit our website, www.we.improvetheworld.net, and unlock the power of the accounting profession. And if you'd like to apply to be a student host on a future episode, email us at agents@improvetheworld.net.